Welcome back into the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast, week number 4, episode number 2. We are breaking down the middle portion here of the Saturday card with Matt Josephs from ESPN Richmond at Mid-Major Matt on Twitter, our two-hole hitter. Matt, welcome on in, bud. How you feeling?
Feeling good. Last week, we got the win on the best bet. Southern Miss did what they were supposed to. App State looked like the fraud we predicted they would be. So feeling good after last week.
Absolutely, man. And we are starting off here with a big point spread, 333, 334. If you are new to the podcast, we go down in rotation order, hitting every single game on the board. And for this segment, we're starting off Kent State and Florida State. We get FSU minus 45, as high as minus 46 as the home favorite, 56 and a hook being the total. FSU's look good so far out the gate here, Matt. Facing a MAC team, can they cover the mid-40s point spread in Doak Campbell?
So usually I don't like playing these numbers here because, you always have to wonder what the coach's motivation for it is, and you have to take a look at their history and stuff like that. So that's why we take a look at like team totals and things like that. Plus, the interesting thing here is Florida State's coming off the bye week, so they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this matchup, which is, you could take 2 days and get ready for Kent State. So that's always interesting. But also, Florida State's playing at Virginia on Friday night, a huge game because Virginia's played pretty well so far this season. So who knows if in the fourth quarter, Florida State doesn't ease up a little bit here. Kent State has been bad, but they've improved. I mean, look, thank God Buffalo got the win last week because I needed it for my win total for the season. But, Kent State was winning with like 2 minutes left in that game. So Kent State's improved. Their team total is like 4.5. I actually think Kent State scores in this game. I would potentially look at the over in this situation. Florida State's supposed to get some wide receivers back for this game potentially. As I said, they've had 2 weeks to prepare, so they're going to be really focused here. But I also think Kent State scores in this contest. So I might look at the over here in this situation.
Yeah, that was a surprising one with Kent State against Buffalo, but kind of a different animal here. So good start, Matt, as we got full action up next, Toledo and Western Michigan. We are seeing the Rockets minus 14 and a hook as the road favorite, 50 being the total. So it's Toledo at Western Michigan next up here, Matt.
So I like Western Michigan in this game, and I like them the rest of the season. Look, it's hard to properly put Western Michigan into perspective. They played at Michigan State that first week. Defense shut them out in the second half, and then they go home and they lose that game to North Texas, but the offense showed what it was supposed to be. The defense just didn't play well. And then last week they lose at Illinois, and they don't score any points, and so I think people are looking at them like, that's not great. And then you see Toledo here, and they come off the win over the FCS program, and they look good against Kentucky. And, they've played well so far this season. I think, especially at 14.5, I think Western Michigan's live here. I like this Broncos team. I think their offense is better. I know the quarterback situation's a little bit uneasy, but you've got the running back there. You've got the wide receiver, decent tight end. Western Michigan's defense has been up to the task at times so far this year. So I think we're getting some value here on a Western Michigan team that's way better than the record they've shown so far.
A good one up next here, Matt. 337, 338, Troy and Buffalo. We are seeing the Buffalo Bulls minus 6.5, home favorites, 42 being the total. This is kind of a wild one in terms of the point spread. Buffalo opened at one shop, like I believe DraftKings, the first one out, opened them 2.5. And then Circa came out like an hour later on Sunday, I'm talking, and opened them 12.5. And what I'm getting at is Troy's quarterback, a pretty good one, might be out for this game. It looks like it's right in the middle of them, of those two numbers right now, as we're talking on Thursday afternoon. 6.5 Buffalo at home, 42 being the total. So what are we thinking here? Troy heading up north from Troy, Alabama to Buffalo, New York.
Yeah, no Goose Crowder for this game. Goose has an injured shoulder. He had surgery, so he's out indefinitely. Their backup, Tucker Kilcrease, has experience. He's a guy who's played before in the past. He wasn't very good in the game against Memphis, so I think a lot of people are seeing that. I like this Buffalo team. I've talked about it. It's one of my largest wagers in the futures market. Is they're over 7.5 for the season, or 6.5, whatever it was. I have them to make the MAC championship game, so I'm a little high on Buffalo. Last week, kind of, it's not going to take me off that position because of the fact that they barely won at Kent State. It's more the fact that they probably didn't take Kent State seriously. And Roberson's a quarterback who's very hot and very cold. And so if you get him in the wrong game, he's going to throw some interceptions and he's not going to look very good. To me, this is the perfect money line piece for a two-team money line parlay. I think Buffalo wins this game. I don't think Troy's going to hit the road and play Buffalo at their place and beat them. This is not the Troy defenses of the past. They're coming off a tough loss against Memphis, 28-7 here. So I like Buffalo in this situation, and I think they're not a bad piece to pair them off with another money line maybe out there. I'm a huge fan of Duke this week. I think the Blue Devils bounce back and beat NC State. So maybe a Buffalo and Duke money line parlay.
All right, a little money line parlay, part of the Every Game on the Board podcast. As we got next one up, heading to the Big Ten, Maryland and Wisconsin. We are seeing the Badgers -10 at home. There is anywhere from 9.5 to 10.5 in the marketplace right now. 44 being the total. The Terps, they haven't played much here, so kind of the biggest game going on the road here. Wisconsin, they lost pretty handily to Alabama, but here we go. Maryland and Wisconsin jump around in Camp Randall, Matt.
Yeah, Towson, Northern Illinois, and Florida Atlantic, the three opponents so far for Maryland who have not left home. And that's not a bad way to start the season when you've got a freshman quarterback as talented as Malik Washington. But now it's time for him to see what he's got. Remember, we saw Underwood, Michigan's quarterback, the heralded freshman, his first road game, he looked scared. He looked bad. The game plan was bad. So, there's a chance that Malik Washington looks pretty bad in Wisconsin. There are wind gusts possible 10 to 15 miles per hour, so that'll make things interesting, especially for the passing game here. Wisconsin's offense isn't very good. Danny O'Neal, Billy Edwards Jr., when he was in there, the offense just hasn't been very good for Wisconsin. The problem is I can't trust Maryland's defense to say, hey, let's take the under in this situation. I need to see something from Malik Washington before I can start trusting Maryland on the road here. Wisconsin's defense is legit. Maybe you can find an under 17.5. Books are offering a 16.5, which means if you buy the point in team totals, you'll have to pay a little bit of juice, but you'll get the key number instead of a bad number. So I would almost try and pay up a little bit, turn that 16.5 into a 17.5, and take the under on Maryland's team total.
All right, we're heading to South Alabama up next. Coastal Carolina in South Alabama. We're seeing the Jaguars, that is USA, -14 and a hook as the home favorite. There's a 15.5 out there, 51 being the total. So the Chanticleers heading to Mobile, Alabama to take on the Jaguars here, Matt.
This feels like a game South Alabama takes some frustrations out. The last 2 weeks, they played Auburn on the road, and then they hosted Tulane, and they probably could have beaten Tulane. They only lost the game by 2 at home. I like this South Alabama team. I think that they have a lot of talent this year. They also are getting healthy. Their linebacker, Blaine Myrick, who missed the last game due to a concussion, he is pretty much practicing full go here. So South Alabama's defense is going to be better. Coastal Carolina has been absolutely miserable offensively so far this season, especially against the FBS competition. They do have that FCS game earlier, and they only scored 13 points in that game. Scored 7 against Virginia. They did not score against East Carolina. MJ Morris has been very disappointing so far for the Coastal Carolina. So once again, and you don't have to buy anything with regards to this, I'm getting at 17.5 for the team total for the Chanticleers on the road. That's a place I'm looking here. So give me under 17.5 points for the Chanticleers as they take on South Alabama.
All right, Matt, as we got UAB in Tennessee up next. This is 12:45 Eastern start. Hefty number here, but maybe hefty for a reason. It is the Volunteers -39 as the home favorite, 69.5 being the total. UAB, I believe they got a win last week, but this is a totally different animal here. Tennessee likes to run it up under Josh Heupel, and of course, off of that loss against Georgia, maybe they're taking out some frustrations, but can they get into the 40s, at least beat UAB by 40 or more here, Matt?
Yeah, this is UAB beat Akron 31-28. Akron had not scored any points before then. They were shut out by Wyoming. They were shut out by Nebraska, and somehow UAB gave up 28 points. I know that this, because I was watching, I know this is Jeff Nadeau's best bet was the over in this game. I like where he's going in this situation. I think I almost would go with Tennessee's team total over, and especially, and I know some books offer this, you could probably get a first half team total over on Tennessee. They are one of the best first half teams in the country when it comes to point totals, and I'm looking it up as we talk here, because one of the things I like to do is take a look at the first halves, Tennessee is averaging 26 points in the first half so far this season, actually 31 on the road. You're going to get a pretty good number, probably a 27.5, a 28.5. Yeah, Tennessee's the type that will definitely run it up. My one concern for the second half is they play at Mississippi State. They return to conference play, but like UAB's not going to stop them here. So I would look at like a Tennessee first half team total over and maybe split a unit on the full game team total over, which is 54.5 here. Last year, Tennessee beat Kent State 71-0 in this sort of situation. So you're right. Josh Heupel has no regrets. He's going to keep his starters in a little bit longer. They're going to score a lot of points in this situation. So maybe split a bet between the first half team total and the full game team total here for Tennessee.
Okay, I like it, Matt. Yeah, bringing in the first half for sure. I mean, particularly with a conference game on deck does kind of make sense, and it's bumped up a point since yesterday, filming around this time yesterday with BMO, with Jeff Nadeau on the over of 68.5. Now it's 69.5. So good stuff there, Matt. We got next one up, 9:30 Eastern. It is UTSA and Colorado State. We are seeing what the Roadrunners, -5 ish, anywhere from 4.5 to 5.5. Again, some opinion in the marketplace here as the road favorite, 59.5 being the total. UTSA, Colorado State.
I don't have a massive opinion in this game. I do find it interesting, though, that UTSA is the road favorite here against Colorado State, a team coming off the bye week. So usually with an early bye week, you're looking at a team and saying, all right, they're gonna figure some things out, 2 weeks to prepare. UTSA coming off of the FCS win, which means it's essentially a scrimmage for them. I do find it interesting the Roadrunners have the leading rusher in the nation, Robert Henry Jr. He is the leading rusher in the country. And Colorado State came out and said Fowler Nkosi will be the starting quarterback this week. And never a good thing when you're coming out of a bye week and you have to announce your starting quarterback. That means there's been some issues there. I don't know if I'm ready to trust the Roadrunners defense on the road in this situation. So if I was to play anything here, which I'm probably not, I'm going to lean to the home dog in this situation. If they weren't coming off a bye week, I probably wouldn't be as interested. But 2 weeks to prepare for this kind of game with a team that has some pieces and isn't too terrible, I would lean in this situation to Colorado State, but it's not my strongest opinion.
Interesting one late night here, Saturday night. This one should be fun. Wyoming and Colorado, 10:15 Eastern. It is Colorado -13, 13.5 as the home favorite, 44 being the total. You know, Wyoming was hanging there with Utah last week. They ended up losing the game somewhat handily, but they did look okay early here, Matt. Now having to go on the road to elevation, but the thing is they come from elevation. I'll throw it over to you. Wyoming, Colorado, Coach Prime, what are we thinking?
Colorado making another quarterback change, going back to Caden Salter, the Liberty transfer. So Coach Prime is just rotating quarterbacks. You know, I didn't necessarily understand the move to Staub. I get that you're trying to find something for this offense, but you know, you got to also build some continuity under center. So going back to Salter, he's hoping to find some of that continuity. And I wonder what Wyoming's head is at, where their head is at for this game, coming off of the home rivalry game. And it's a rivalry, but it's not really. They hadn't played since 2010 against Utah, but you have a really good team at home and you get up for that game and then you lose 31-6. And now you're heading to Colorado, who should play better at home. Granted, you know, Delaware covered at Colorado a couple weeks ago. I wish I could trust this Wyoming offense to cover in this sort of situation. I think Wyoming's defense can keep them in this game, but I just don't know if Wyoming can score enough, even against a bad Colorado defense. So I want to play Wyoming in this situation, but I don't know if I can get to the window on it.
Next one up, we got 349-350, 12 o'clock Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. So this is a 10 o'clock local time kick, a big one in the Big 12 Conference. It is Texas Tech and Utah. We are seeing the Utes -3 at a lot of shops. There is 2.5 out there, 57 being the total. Big one in the Big 12 Conference here, Texas Tech at Utah from Salt Lake.
I mean, the people who watch this segment know where I'm going here. I mean, I am one of the largest fans of Kyle Whittingham in the country. And you know, in this sort of situation, you know, last week I was worried about that team going to Wyoming, you know, a rivalry game. And they showed up, they played great defense, and they won the game rather easily. In this sort of situation, any sort of toss-up, I'm leaning to Utah. For the most part. I like their defense this year. I like their offense. I think Dampier has fit in very nicely into their offense. And what do we know about Texas Tech? Now, granted, they have a ton of starters back. It was like 20 starters back from last year, I think. But they beat up on Oregon State, they beat up on Kent State, they beat up on Arkansas Pine Bluff. Like, Morton's a really good quarterback and everything, and I like the continuity that his team has. But going to Utah is a completely different story. And this is why I almost hate the whole 3 scrimmages and then jump into conference play type of scheduling here, because what has Texas State or Texas Tech shown this year? They've shown nothing. They've beaten up on teams that they will never see again the rest of the season. Now they make the leap to play Utah. So my lean here is Utah. I'm going Kyle Whittingham anytime that I need to, because I think he's better than a lot of coaches in America. And when he's got a good team and he's a good coach, I'm going to lean to them in that situation.
No disagreement, Matt. I mean, I would say Willingham's up there with the best coaches in all of college football. Does the 10 a.m. local time kick kind of hurt the Utah side at all in your handicap, or no, it really doesn't matter?
I mean, it's still early for Texas Tech too. I mean, obviously, it's still, what would it be, 11 a.m. for them as well. So, like, I mean, it's an early start time for both teams. And the only thing that would concern me is maybe the students showing up. But, like, I would think for a game of this magnitude, they would show up in Utah. So, yeah, the early start time, I think it's almost an equalizer between the two. And once again, if you're going to give me a game with a whole bunch of equals, the unequal part of it is the head coach in this situation.
All right, we got next one up, 3 o'clock Eastern, 351, 352, 12 o'clock local time. Oregon State and Oregon, the Civil War here, minus 35.5. That is the Ducks as the home favorite, 55 and a hook being the total. Oregon State, Oregon.
Yeah, I tried with Oregon State a couple weeks ago. They didn't do it for me. I mean, Malik Murphy does not look very good. The offensive line is brutal. He's running around a lot. I mean, it's just a bad situation for Oregon State. But, like, this is the game they will get up for probably the rest of the season, because obviously they play an independent schedule. So, like, there's really nothing that's going to get them going. They're probably not going to make a bowl game. So this is the game. Now, for the Oregon side, it's interesting. Noah Whittington, the running back, is questionable for this game. He's one of their many running backs. I know they've got a bunch, so that's not as much of an injury. And then one of the Oregon blogs, I apologize, I don't remember which one, so credit to them, though. Wide receiver DeCorian Moore is questionable for this game with an injury. One of the blogs is saying that there's an injury that has not necessarily been talked about as much. And if he doesn't play, Oregon's going to win this game. I just don't know if they cover. I don't know if I can hold my nose enough and play Oregon State here. The other thing that makes this interesting, Drew, is Oregon's going to Penn State next week. And that is the season. That is everything. That is, like, this rivalry game almost means nothing to Oregon because they know they're going to win. It's just about how much they're going to win. But, like, the Penn State game next week is a large part of their season. So I almost wonder here, situationally, if Oregon State's the play. I just can't do it again. I did it 2 weeks ago. They're a miserable-looking team. But I can't help but wonder if we get somewhat of a distracted Oregon team in the second half as they get ready for Penn State.
Good point there. As we head to Norman, Oklahoma for the next one, big game in the SEC, 3:30 Eastern, Auburn and Oklahoma. We are seeing the Sooners minus 6.5. Ticking up to -7 now as the home favorite, 47 being the total. What both teams undefeated out the gate, both teams without a conference big win so far, with Oklahoma beating Michigan, Auburn beating Baylor. Now they get into the conference stretch here. Touchdown being the ultimate equalizer, 6.5 is out there. Oklahoma hosting Auburn here, Matt.
The Jackson Arnold revenge game going back to Oklahoma. We'll see what the emotions are like for him heading into this game. I will defer to you pretty much for this one. I mean, you've got the Auburn hat here. I would think Auburn potentially plus the 7 is worth a look here, but I really like this Oklahoma defense. Last week at Temple, they could have not shown up. They could have played bad. They won 42-3. So this team is really good, and I like their defense here, but that 7, as you said, is the great equalizer here. So I'm interested to see what the guy with the Auburn hat has to say for this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's been a long road here, Matt. What more than a half a decade since this is the biggest game for Auburn in at least 5 years since they let go of Gus Malzahn. And I'll say that I was waiting for the 7. I really was. And I wasn't sure we were going to get it. And it looks like 7s are out there now. So the market, like in Oklahoma, I do like Auburn. I really do. Some of that might be biased. And I need to say, outside of Cam Newton taking snaps, I'm probably under a 500 better in terms of betting the sides in Auburn games. So I don't know if I would take too much from it. But, hey, if you're giving me a 7, Matt, I'll take Auburn plus 7.
Yeah, I mean, worst comes to worst, it's a push if it's a 7-point game. But that's a key number, and so and in theory, and I know some people are going to roll their eyes and they're going to be like, "You're an idiot," but like in theory, if you wanted to tease Oklahoma down, that 7 or 6.5 would make it a perfect thing to take it down to a half or a 1. So that's something I know people don't usually tease college football, but if you're one of those people, you could do that in this situation as well.
We got a good stretch of games here. Next one up, Tulane and Mississippi. So Ole Miss at home in Oxford, laying 12.5, 61.5 being the total. This Tulane, the Green Wave team, is a pretty solid football team, Matt. And if they win this game, they're going to be talked about for that G5 playoff spot. But this is a tough matchup for them going on the road into Oxford. What are we thinking in Vaught Hemingway, 3:30 Eastern on Saturday?
Yeah, I kind of like Tulane in this situation. Don't know if I'm going to get to the window, though, but I just think Tulane has a defense that can keep them in this game. Everybody's saying Austin Simmons is going to start. I almost don't know if that's a good thing. He's been okay this season. I liked what I saw from their backup last week, granted a little bit, but I think that I think with Retzlaff under center, I think this Tulane offense can hang in there a little bit. There's a chance of rain in this game, which I think is always the equalizer for the lower ranked team in this sort of situation, for the underdog. If you can kind of bring the weather down to a level where both teams are somewhat equal, you've got an Ole Miss team that's got LSU next week at home, so like that's a huge game for them. I would not be surprised if the back door was open for Tulane to drive down the field and get the cover in this sort of situation. So I lean to Tulane here.
The next one up in the good stretch of games here, it's West Virginia and Kansas. Another good one in the Big 12, 6 o'clock Eastern kick. Does look like Jayhawks minus 12.5 to as high as minus 13.5. They've taken a little money here this week, 55.5 being the total. Of course, we get West Virginia off of the backyard brawl win over Pitt. Kansas, I believe, is off of a bye week. So, hey, almost 2 touchdowns, though. What are we thinking, West Virginia and Kansas?
Yeah, situationally, this is a Kansas or nothing play. I mean, Kansas has had 2 weeks to think about their loss to Missouri, and Kansas has looked impressive so far in the other games. Now, granted, that was against Fresno State and an FCS opponent, but like you give them 2 weeks to think about that Missouri game, and now you've got a West Virginia team coming in off of a backyard brawl overtime victory. I think situationally, plus West Virginia won this game last year, 32-28. I would lean to Kansas here. I don't think West Virginia's offense is as good as it was at home. I think that they're going to be slightly hungover in this sort of situation. Now, Kansas's defense isn't great either, but I think Kansas can name their score in this sort of situation. I just wonder if West Virginia won their Super Bowl last week and going into a game against a much more rested team, they suddenly show up to be the team that they're going to be. Remember, West Virginia plays with this obscene pace right now, and if they're not getting touchdowns and if they're not getting the scores and they're not holding the ball, that means a lot more possessions for a Kansas offense that should be able to find some success and has 2 weeks to figure out what went wrong in some of their previous games.
Sure. As we got another good one here, heading to Waco, Texas, Baylor hosting Arizona State. Big one in the Big 12 Conference, minus 2 and a hook. That is the Bears as the home favorite across the board right now. 60 being the total. Sun Devils, Bears from Waco, tight point spread. What do you think here, Matt?
Yeah, 91 degrees, it looks like, about temperature-wise, so that's going to help out Baylor, although Arizona State, I'm sure, doesn't mind the heat being out in Arizona. Arizona State's defense got a couple of injuries to certainly watch out for. Xavier Alford, a safety, will be out a few weeks, and look, their defense is good. It's not great. They also have a short week ahead, get TCU at home here. I like this Baylor team. I think this Baylor team, Sawyer Robertson, has been very good so far this season. They came off of essentially a scrimmage against Stanford last time out. There is no look ahead here. They play at Oklahoma State next week. I think we get a focused Baylor team in this situation, and I like them at home. I know Arizona State probably gained some confidence after the game last week, but slight lean to Baylor here in this situation.
I'm with you. I think Baylor's a little underrated off of that week 1 loss, nationally televised game, and they've been a good bet since then. I'm going to probably ride them. I'm going to ride them again here against Arizona State as we got USC hosting Michigan State up next. Trojans minus 18.5, big favorites at home, 56 being the total. This is the last game on the card, I think, outside of the Hawaii game. So late night affair in Southern California, Matt.
Yeah, and I was reading all the Michigan State fans. They're sad this game's late because they're playing out at USC, and I get it. This is the perils of conference realignment. That when you play out at USC and UCLA, you're going to have 10 o'clock start times, and so that's what's going to happen here. Michigan State's an interesting team so far. Aiden Childs has been all right. He's the type of kid that I think can win a game like this, but I also think he can throw a couple of interceptions and they could get blown out in this sort of situation. They gave up 24 points to Youngstown State last week in a 41-24 victory. USC, we've seen what USC's done at home. I mean, USC against lesser teams at home this season, I think they scored again on Missouri State. They won that game 73-13. They put up 59 on Georgia Southern. They put up 33 at Purdue. Another one of those potential sleepy spots last week. They showed up and played really well. They have a road game at Illinois next week, a much more important conference game for them considering how good Illinois is. But USC is the type of team that I think is going to go 4 quarters, and even if they're up a lot, they're going to keep scoring. Their team total's 37.5. I'd potentially look at the over there. I think USC is going to put up a lot of points on Michigan State out on the West Coast.
And Matt, you bring up the start time and some Michigan State fans complaining about it. I asked you about this early start time there in Utah. The late start time, I mean, you're around these kids, with your radio show and all that, and kind of ACC media days. I also read an article where Boston College went on the road to Stanford late night, did not look good. Minnesota, the same thing out in Cal. I'm not really picking that up, though. I think it might have something to do with the travel, but late night with college, I don't factor that in. If anything, the early kick would hurt me, would kind of make me downgrade the team, but not late night with college kids. Do you have any opinion on that in your handicaps?
Yeah, I don't think it really matters in this sort of situation. I mean, Minnesota was, if I remember correctly, a slight favorite against Cal, so that was a little bit disappointing, but Minnesota's not a great team anyway. And then, the Boston College-Stanford game, Boston College had a couple of key defensive injuries, and, Stanford is a prideful team. So I don't think it's the whole East Coast to West Coast sort of thing. I just think the West Coast teams aren't bad right now. And so, outside of UCLA, obviously, but the West Coast teams are defending their territory well. And I think that's the advantage. We see that in every sport, Drew. The East Coast, West Coast thing in the NBA and Major League Baseball and football and all that stuff. Look, we saw Georgia Southern stay out in California for the whole week between the Fresno State and USC games. So it's just all how you approach the West Coast sort of thing.
All good points there, Matt. As we'll move down the list here, every game on the board, Apple Podcasts, Spotify as well. Just search it, every game on the board. We got Matt Josephs here, ESPN Richmond, at Mid-Major Matt on Twitter. A great follow there. Always giving out good picks there. Even on Saturdays, I've seen Matt. So give him a follow on X at Mid-Major Matt. We got next one up, Connecticut hosting Ball State. We are seeing UConn. Kind of rarefied air, 3 touchdown favorites, -21, 53 being the total, Ball State and UConn.
Yeah, this one's interesting because, as you said, UConn's not often a 21-point favorite over another FBS team. And I think Ball State's not terrible. Granted, they remember last week they played New Hampshire. That was a single-digit line. They did cover. They won 34-24 over a good FCS team in New Hampshire. And then UConn, and I'm mad because we had this in our thing, and I talked about it on the show last week. I like Delaware plus the points, and I didn't fire away on it. And obviously, Delaware won the game. I think UConn's a little embarrassed here in this situation. I think UConn's going to play pretty well. I would get involved in any sort of Cam Edwards props. He's their number 1 running back. Now, UConn uses a couple of different running backs, but I think Cam Edwards has a pretty good game. I think Ball State's running back, Ashley, has a pretty good game in this situation. So I'd almost look at player props there. I feel like both teams are going to be running the ball pretty successfully. I don't know if I can get to a over on the 52 here, but I think Ball State can hold their own scoring-wise against UConn, who has shown up offensively. The problem is they just don't stop anybody defensively.
We got 11 a.m. local time kick in the Liberty Bowl with Memphis hosting Arkansas up next. We are seeing the Razorbacks -7 and a hook at most shops. There is a -8 out there as the road favorite, 62 being the total. Arkansas at Memphis next up here, Matt.
Yeah, 90 degrees for this game, although once again, I don't think either team's going to mind. They both practice in the heat as well. And this is, this is a sandwich spot for Arkansas. Coming off the tough loss at Ole Miss, they got Notre Dame at home up next. That's a huge game, even though Notre Dame is 0-2 so far. Probably will be 1-2 entering that game. Arkansas's got a lot of injuries in that secondary, and Memphis wants to throw the ball. And Memphis, look, they need to win this game if they want to get close to being the G5 playoff representative. USF has already got 2 wins under their belt for the resume there. And this is a Memphis team that certainly has played in games like this before. I almost like Memphis plus the 7.5 in this situation. I know Taylon Green's been great for Arkansas, but I don't trust their defense here. I think Memphis can find some success offensively. And if Arkansas is looking ahead to Notre Dame and on the road in this sort of situation, they may not give their best effort. Not my favorite play on the board, but I do lean to Memphis here plus the points.
Big one in the Big Ten up next, Michigan and Nebraska. We are seeing the Wolverines -2.5 as the road favorite, 46.5 being the total. Big game in Lincoln, Nebraska. The Wolverines at the Cornhuskers.
Yeah, I need to know what Michigan's game plan is for this. We saw a couple weeks ago they went to Oklahoma. Underwood was kind of held under wraps, and then he played terribly. And granted, Oklahoma's defense deserves a lot of that credit. But then against Central Michigan, they unveiled all this stuff where he's running, and he's throwing, and he was doing all this stuff. And it's like, well, wait, you should probably switch that around and have the more open game plan at Oklahoma instead of Central Michigan. So, I need to know what Michigan's offense is going to look like in this situation. They have a secondary that with several injuries, something you want to watch for to make sure to look at the participation reports, especially as they get closer to start time. Michigan's secondary is very injured, and that would play right into Donovan Raiola, who, could find some success. Last week, Michigan played 11 different defensive backs, and 6 of them were true freshmen. Now, going up against Central Michigan at home, that's great. You have the home crowd. You have a bad team. Going to Nebraska, hostile atmosphere, that is completely different. So I would certainly make sure to look at the participation report as we get closer, because if Michigan still has a lot of those same injuries in the secondary, I think Raiola finds some success in this game, and Nebraska could certainly win. If they're healthy, then I kind of lean to Michigan in this situation. So make sure to check out the participation reports as we get closer to the start time.
Makes sense, Matt. As we got Purdue and Notre Dame up next, 3:30 Eastern kick here. We get the Irish -25.5 to as high as -26.5 as the home favorite. 52 and a hook being the total. Boilermakers at the Irish.
This feels like a name your score situation for Notre Dame. This feels like Notre Dame played 2 tough opponents. Texas A&M and Miami. They had a bye week in between. They look bad. Everybody's talking bad about them. This feels like one of those games where Notre Dame could just do whatever they want. Purdue loses at home to USC. Their defense isn't very good. Notre Dame won this game 66-7 last year. A couple of injuries to watch out for. Corner Leonard Moore is questionable for this game. Not that I think Purdue's going to take advantage of that. The other thing that's interesting is their kicker, Noah Burnett, is questionable with a right hip injury. Say that again. Right hip injury. If they don't have their starting kicker, they may be more likely to go for more touchdowns in this sort of situation. Then you might want to look at the touchdowns market, which I know DraftKings and I believe one other sports book has, because if they're not kicking the 3-pointers, they're going to go for the 7-pointers. I feel like Notre Dame gets rid of a lot of frustrations in this situation, names their score, and beats up on Purdue.
Bringing in the kicker injury into the prop market. I like it, Matt. As we got last game for this segment, we'll bring in Robbie Vino to finish off the card here. Every game on the board, week 4. As we got 371, 372, 730 Eastern, Stanford and Virginia. We are seeing UVA -15 to as high as -16 as the home favorite, 49 being the total. Tough trip here across country, Matt. We've talked about it a couple of times. Stanford and Virginia ACC clash.
So I noted this. So I do a newsletter for the Prop Queen, Ariel Epstein, and I was talking about how this is rarefied air for Virginia. Like Virginia, the last time they've been favored by 10 points or more was 2021 when they were a 10-point favorite against Illinois and Duke. Now, they covered both of those games, but that's many years ago. Against an FBS opponent, they have not been favored by this in a long time. Here's this. Situationally, I really wonder what Virginia does here, because they've got a huge game coming up on Friday. They host Florida State, and that is a huge game because we know Florida State nationally ranked, and if Virginia wants to prove that they are back, or at least for now back, they will want to play well for that Florida State game. And then in comes Stanford, a lowly Stanford team, making the long trip cross country after a win against Boston College. They're back home again next week. And they've got a Virginia team. Like, my thing is, I wouldn't trust Virginia to lay the number here. I just wouldn't. Not to say they won't cover, but if I'm looking at this situation, I'm looking at the card and everything, and I'm saying, all right, what do I like? I think Virginia's going to win. Don't get me wrong. They're going to win this game. But I don't know if I want to lay the number here for the situation. This is a team that's still learning how to be a better program. You know, the NC State game, they were better than NC State. They just didn't make the plays in the end. That's what a losing program does. Virginia's transitioning, or at least attempting to transition, from being a losing program to being a winning program. So a winning program wins this game by 3 touchdowns. They take care of business. They get ready for that Florida State. A losing program wins this game, but it's a little closer than it has to be. Virginia maybe has to keep their starters in a little bit longer, and maybe they're a little bit more tired for Friday night. So long-winded answer by saying I don't trust Virginia laying this many points. They're going to win the game. They get Cam Robinson back. He is their best player on defense. Stanford coming off the win, maybe they're a little happy and maybe unfocused, but I cannot trust Virginia laying this many points with a huge game coming up on Friday night.
Matt Josephs at Mid-Major Matt. He's got a show, ESPN Richmond. Matt, you just hit on Virginia a bunch there. I want to ask you just kind of about the region, you know, whether it be the Liberty JMU game, Virginia Tech firing their head coach. Did you want to throw anything out there with kind of the local teams that you're covering?
Yeah, I can do that. So I see Tech is a 35.5-point favorite. FanDuel put that up. I don't know if anybody else. Fanatics also has that up. There is the belief, and I don't know about you, Drew, about the whole like fire your coach the next week, you play better sort of situation. I saw Wofford when they played Richmond. Wofford has no offense whatsoever. Their defense wasn't bad, but their offense is just brutal. The total's 48.5 in this game. If you believe Virginia Tech's going to play a whole lot better because they fired Brent Pry, then maybe you lay the 35.5, but a noon start time on ACC Plus with a half-empty stadium. I don't know what the motivation is going to be for the Hokies in that game, so I'd probably stay away. And you mentioned the other game, which ironically, I don't know if you saw this statistic. So JMU and Liberty just added about 5 more games to their series going forward. They scheduled a game in 2040. That is now the furthest scheduled college football game right now in the sport. 2040, JMU and Liberty are going to play each other. With regards to this game, you missed the best number. Yesterday it was 9.5. Somebody must have given out Liberty plus the points because it's down to 8 in some places. It's down to 8.5 in some places. Here's my thing with JMU, and I know I'm being a little bit long-winded, but of course these are teams that I'm passionate about because we cover them. JMU's coming off a bye week. JMU's been using this 2-quarterback system with Alonzo Barnett. He's basically the passer, and Matthew Sluka, who's basically the runner. In game 1 against the FCS team, they used it really well. Both guys came in, they did their thing, and it worked really well against the FCS opponent. Against Louisville, they overused Matthew Sluka in my mind. He ran the ball like 20-something times, and they lost a game that they probably could have won. Their defense was amazing outside of the last run by Isaac Brown in the fourth quarter. So JMU's had 2 weeks. The coaching staff, I had the coach on our show here. You know, he said they're going to keep using the 2-quarterback system. Hopefully they scale it back a little bit and let Alonzo Barnett eat as a quarterback because he's really good. I think Liberty's a desperate team right now. I think Liberty, after 2 losses, like, look, the G5 playoff spot's gone. There's no chance they're getting it. I don't care if they win out. I don't care if they win the Conference USA. Liberty's not going to be the G5 representative. So what do they have left? Now they get a in-state rival that they do a lot of recruiting against. JMU and Liberty are going up against each other, and Liberty's got the money edge in that sort of situation. So JMU's not getting the kids who want the NIL here. I think Liberty scores early. I think Liberty's got some trick plays up their sleeve. I think they've saved some things. I think Liberty is going to be highly motivated. I think I would sprinkle a little bit on Liberty to score first in this game. I think Liberty covers in this situation. I think desperation's a powerful drug. I mean, this is a team that has a decent defense. Ethan Vasco has decent numbers this year. It just hasn't shown on the field. I think JMU wins this game, but I think Liberty covers the number here. The total is about 47. I think Liberty wants this game to stay lower. I think JMU wants this game to get a little bit higher. But I think Liberty plus the points is the way to go potentially in that situation.
Interesting breakdowns there. Yeah, towards the Flames in that JMU Liberty game. We got best bet time up right now, guys. And Matt, you got a tough follow, man. Southern Miss plus 3.5. Tip of the cap to you last week in Southern Miss winning outright and cashing that ticket. Where are we going this week for the best bet?
So I'll tell you this, I am going to have several games from this segment on my card for Saturday, and certainly I will post that up. I post all my plays on the Action Network app, so you can follow all of them and see what I do. I think what I'm going to do here is I'm taking Western Michigan, and I think you said there was a 14.5 out there for Western Michigan. I think people are just underselling the Broncos because they look so bad against Illinois. They didn't look good against Michigan State, but if you remember the game in between those, their offense stood toe-to-toe with North Texas. Now, granted, Toledo's offense is really good too, but I just think Western Michigan getting back into MAC play, getting into something more comfortable here. They are home. I think Western Michigan plus the points here is the way to go. But I'll tell you this, there's going to be several things from this area on my card on Saturday.
I'm seeing only 14 and a hook.
Okay.
So yeah, you get that hook on 14.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I mean, I think Toledo is a very good team, but I think this Toledo defense is not quite as good as it's been in the past. Their secondary is really good, don't get me wrong, but Western Michigan could just run it with Jalen Buckley quite a bit here to take advantage of that. So give me Western Michigan plus the 2 touchdowns and the hook. I think Western Michigan, I don't know if I'm daring enough to sprinkle on the money line in this sort of situation, but I think Western Michigan can certainly cover that number.
Great stuff, Matt. As always, we've got the best bet in Western Michigan, the Broncos, plus 14 and a hook. You do get that hook on the 2 touchdowns. Matt, anything else you want to throw out before we shut this down?
I know this is certainly it's been a lot of fun. It's crazy that how many weeks we're already in. I love this sport so much, and it's sad that we've gone through the non-conference portion almost for everybody. But I think this is, make sure to check out situations, make sure to check out weather and everything. And certainly as we start getting into conference play, participation reports become more and more important. And seeing which teams are good with them, which teams are not as good with them, but certainly a lot of them come out a couple hours before start time, so make sure to watch them as we get closer to conference play.
Great stuff as always. Matt Josephs, ESPN Richmond. Give him a follow at Mid-Major Matt on X. That's going to do it for this segment. We'll be back in about an hour with Robbie Vino finishing off the card. Until then, guys, cash those tickets. Thanks for tuning in.